Hello everyone, welcome to the Eiffel Tower podcast. My name is Oliver G. Today's episode is with French-American chef Justin Kent, talking about his new restaurant, talking about his cafe, and a little bit about how his experience in the famed restaurant Arpege 10 years ago shaped him as a chef today. But more on that in a second. First, a little introduction if you're new around here. This show, I just looked it up. This show is a weekly podcast about Paris. In this year, so far, in 2021, we have listeners in 166 countries, which is insane. 166 countries. And I looked it up because I know you guys are curious about this. At least I am. I looked up the top 10 countries. Number 1, United States, by far. Howdy to all the American listeners. Second is my home country, Australia. Then France, which I suspect is mostly foreigners and expats and probably Americans and Australians in France rather than French people. But hey, who knows? Fourth, Canada. Then United Kingdom. Then Germany. Then New Zealand. Then Ireland. Then Netherlands. And then Sweden at 10th. I was kind of surprised by that list. I was surprised by Ireland. But cool, welcome to everyone from all those 166 countries, and especially from the top 10. Before we get into this episode, I'm going to read out a proper bit of Gmail at the end, which I sometimes call it. My last name is G after all, guys. I thought I'd read out just some message from Instagram this week. I think you might find this one pretty fun. It's from Meg in South Africa. Should I attempt the accent? I think South Africa is one of the ones I can do. Hi, Oliver. I was feeling very cooped up in South African winter lockdown. Am I getting it? I haven't been to Paris in years, but I adore it. I stumbled upon your podcast and I've had episode after episode playing today. Thank you for keeping me company. New vomited listener for sure. Meg, what do you say? She wrote new vomited listener. I responded, of course. I asked her if she meant something else, and she said she meant committed listener, but that's what you wrote, and that's what I've read. Welcome aboard the Eiffel Tower, Meg. Thank you, and apologies for trying to do a South African accent, but hey, I've got to have some fun when I'm reading by myself. It's time to get into today's episode. The guest is Justin Kent. If you've never heard of this guy before, as I said before, he's half American, half French. He runs, you might know the cafe that he runs. It's called Zia. Z-I-A or Z-I-A for you Australians and Brits and maybe Irish. That's at 22 Avenue de Tourville in the 7th arrondissement. And he's just opened Milagro. That's a Spanish word meaning miracle. Milagro, which is also in the 7th, just around the corner at 85 Avenue Bosquet. I'll write those addresses down in the show notes. MilagroParis.com is the website. He's an interesting guy with an interesting story. You're about to hear it right now. We sat down in his newly opened restaurant for this. But I wanted to say, he's a new voice to this podcast, but he's not a new voice to the Eiffel Tower. If you were a Patreon member back in May 2020, you would have seen us take a 90-minute walk through the 7th arrondissement, and we went into this exact restaurant where we're sitting, and it was a construction site, and he showed us around, pointed things out. So if you're a member, I'll share the link. And what am I talking about there is Patreon. People who pay a monthly subscription can watch all the bonuses. I'll share a link to that. But also, I'm going to share a workaround how you can get it for free at the end of this episode if you're quick. And I mean really quick. Because I know there's a bunch of people who wish they were members but aren't. And, I want to look out for you guys as well. But that's at the end of the episode where I'll read out some emails and stuff. Now we're talking to Justin. We're talking about food in Paris, talking about waiters, the reputation of French waiters, talking about how to open a restaurant in the 7th. You know the drill. Hope you enjoy it. Tell a friend if you really do. But most importantly of all, next time you're in Paris, pop into the restaurant, Milagro, and say hello from me. Let's get into the episode. Justin Kent.
Oliver, how's it going?
How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. I'm happy. We got service coming on tonight. We got a good amount of reservations coming in, and we've been open at the new restaurant Milagro now for 2 months, and honestly, it's been a really great 2 months. It's the positive kind of say customer facing, the positive reviews we've been getting and the feedback anyways.
It must be even doubly positive to know that there was so much that you had to get through to get to this point, which we can talk about in a minute, but it's like a marathon almost, and now you're here. Now you're open.
It's definitely been a wave of relief from the day we opened. It's been some long days for sure, but I think the positivity around the opening and how kind of things have been going has really allowed me to kind of maintain a high energy level for the amount of work I've been doing.
Because chefs and even wait staff and stuff in Paris, but maybe around the world, are kind of known for their psychotic energy, right? Like it's a whole different... I always hear stories about people who finish their shift at like 1 o'clock and then they go out to the bar with all the other servers and chefs and stuff. Is this the same in Paris?
It depends. When I worked at Arpege 10 years ago, those were extremely long days, and by the time we got out of work, we had to be back so early that nobody went out.
No.
At the end of the week, after we did a big clean down of the restaurant, we would kind of all maybe hang around a little bit and have some beers before heading home.
Yeah.
But generally what we do here, which is great because I think our entire staff really enjoys each other, is after service we might stick around and have a beer with each other. For me, I tend to kind of have an ability to stay out probably way later than I should.
Really?
I stay here at the restaurant. It's kind of my little bit of downtime.
Yeah.
During the day I'm working so much that I don't have a lot of time to just kind of sit down and relax.
How many hours would you be in here on a day that you're open?
My general day is to drop my daughter off at school around 8:30, and I usually come right into the restaurant at that point. I deal with any administrative work that I've got to do, and then kind of get right to cooking, organizing our kitchen in a way that makes sense, and just putting bits and pieces together while the rest of the staff then will start to kind of arrive for a lunch service.
You're exhausted all the time.
No, I mean honestly, it's like I was saying, since we opened, this kind of wave of relief is that we're here. That was the hard part. Everything previous was really the hard part. We had hoped for a little bit of an easier opening in terms of all of the work that had happened before. But since the day of opening, it has been, really great. The numbers that we see here at the new restaurant took me, a couple years to generate at Zia.
Because so for the people who've come in late to your story, or who are just meeting you for the first time, you got, and you mentioned Arpege, which I want to talk about. In fact, if I rewind and fast forward to the future, you talked about good reviews. I want to give you a good review. Let's start with that. I was sitting in this exact same seat, 2 or 3 nights ago or something? I can't remember.
Thursday?
Yeah.
Wednesday?
Yeah. And delicious.
Thank you.
Delicious meal. I was here with a group of friends and my son. Is this a child-friendly restaurant?
It
Definitely
is,
was. So, do you know that the couple that was sitting here over my shoulder, when they left, they came over to Lena and they said something like, I just want to say, it's really great that you can take your child out you take your little child out. So even your customers are friendly. Your customers, your staff, and the food was great. It was just a wonderful night. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, that means the world to me because, that's really why I do what I do is, I enjoy the cooking. I enjoy sharing that I'm passionate about with people that come in here. So I feel like when folks come in and sit down and have a great meal, a great experience, that lets me know that I'm doing my job right.
You're doing it great. And let's you got the menu in front of you. Let's give it's kind of teasing the listeners a little bit, but I'll tell them what you got and what I ate.
So mostly
before we rewind to Zia and Arpege.
Sure.
We're doing like a time travel episode here. I had the Magret de Canard.
You had the Magret. That's been on since the opening. That one's probably been our best seller.
Okay.
And so we have the idea for the menu for me here is to work with French products just about exclusively and to really elevate that, but with more of an international flair. Although the name Milagro is in Spanish, I really wanted to use it as an opportunity to not say pigeonhole me into a specific type of cuisine, because I like cuisines from all around. I get inspired by various things that I might see and read about or want to try and incorporate into the menu. I don't particularly want to stick to only French food, although there's almost exclusively French technique, and there definitely are some French dishes. I like to try and play with flavor profiles that come from all over.
You're a bit multi-culti yourself, right?
Well, I grew up in America in the Southwest in New Mexico, and spent a majority of my time there. I lived in California for a few years, in Colorado, and then kind of back and forth here in France as well.
And what was the French connection?
My mother's French.
That's right. So you were perfectly bilingual. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I remember.
My mother's French, my dad's American, and so I have a lot of family out here as well. My grandmother always cooked. My brother-in-law, who lives in California, is French.
Yeah.
Who's married to my older sister, who happens to be born here, but grew up.
And the
mostly in the States.
Spanish, is it because New Mexico?
New Mexico, just north of Mexico,
Sure.
is has a heavy Mexican culture. A lot of Navajo culture as well. Our typical cuisine there, which at one point I'll definitely incorporate more of here at the restaurant, is a bit more on a spicier side sometimes, so that doesn't sell as well. But eventually, as we get more and more busy, I'll try and incorporate some more New Mexico flair into our food. But New Mexican cuisine in general is built around a lot of traditional Navajo cooking and spices and herbs that are generally grown in the area.
And for those who don't know what Navajo is,
American Indians.
Is that the word for American?
Native Americans anyway.
In general? Is that
No. Navajo is a specific tribe that comes from the area that I'm around.
Okay.
And Zia is the name of a pueblo in that area. And the symbol on the New Mexico state flag, which is what I named my first restaurant after.
New Mexico is also where Breaking Bad was.
Yeah, that's probably at the moment its larger claim to fame, but it has Santa Fe has the oldest church in the United States, the oldest house in the United States, and.
But at the moment, it's all Breaking Bad.
But in the moment, Breaking Bad and selling meth is what it's.
Do they go be on tourism there on that? Like in New Zealand for Lord of the Rings, that was all anyone talked about. Like on the Wellington airport, they made a golem that was the size of an airplane reaching out for a ring. Like they went all in on that. I remember it. Do they do the same thing in New Mexico?
I know. So again, I grew up in Santa Fe. Albuquerque is about 45 minutes south of Santa Fe,
right.
And I know that over the years I had seen plenty of kind of tours or whatever around set pieces of Breaking Bad and stuff. But other than that, I don't know that they kind of dug in. There's a big film industry in New Mexico. Right. They offer tax incentives to the film industry, and so you have some fairly large studios. Marvel shoot movies there, and tons of people. Westerns are often filmed out there and stuff.
That makes sense. But anyway, we'll put that to the side. Here's because I think it would take too long to go through the whole menu, but I got an idea.
Yeah.
Imagine do you do a bit of the waiting as well on the table?
No, I like to come out and speak with the tables and bring some of the food out and stuff like that.
I guess also because I know you, so when we were sitting here, you were here as well. But if you were the waiter, and imagine that this microphone, which is, I don't know, thousands of listeners around the world, but it's the customer, what are you going to tell them?
So we have these, one thing I like is our entrees are set to either be kind of an entree for an individual, or some of our smaller plates are great for sharing. But one of the things that I think has kind of led to a lot of positivity are these chorizo and sweet potato croquettes that we do with some pickled red onions and some dried herbs that we kind of sprinkle on top.
Delicious, we had that.
And those are super tasty. Our ceviche, I think, is quite good. As we opened, I had a menu, and then over time kind of spoke a lot with customers and got feedback from the wait staff as to what customers were saying about certain foods, and then kind of adjusted my game plan from there on certain dishes. Our staff there's not one French person that works here. They're from all over, but our front of house staff is a couple of them are from South America. We have an Argentinian who's our manager, and Felipe who's from Chile, and we have Adriana who's from Puerto Rico, and Maria, who's the manager, is from Argentina. And as we were kind of going through some of the dishes, I wanted to elaborate more on, or kind of provide, something that was maybe missing from the menu. And so I started kind of taking these things that were inspired a little bit about where they came from, and incorporated that into the menu. Cool. So we have like a chimichurri on our anglais, which is a hanger steak, which is kind of my play on a steak and French fries. And then a Peruvian ceviche, which, Felipe was kind enough to say, this is kind of how we eat it, and it's more inspired by a Peruvian style. And so I kind of elaborated on that, and I think that has turned into a very tasty dish, and maybe one of the better ones on our menu in its entirety.
Amazing. An evolving menu.
Yeah, a lot of this. So, other than, say, I think 3 dishes in terms of the entree, 3 entrees are the only things that are left from our initial opening. Everything else is kind of changed.
In other words, this potential customer out in listener land might come and get a whole different menu.
Yeah, except for probably like the croquettes, the chorizo croquettes with sweet potato. Those probably stick around as like a staple. People tend to really like that. Same thing with maybe our terrine. We do a really nice pâté de campagne with some dried figs and a wonderful vinegar and pickled mustard seeds that I think is great for easy sharing and stuff in place of a charcuterie platter, so to speak. Some of the other things will probably change around. I try and keep it aligned with, I always like to do some type of raw fish type preparation. Right. So something along the lines of a ceviche, or,
It kind of feels like you're a restaurant that you don't want to be boxed in by one tagline.
You're spanning
the genres here.
Yeah. When we were still under administrative closure, I had done some takeaway food from here, which ended up actually being a great experience. We did a Thanksgiving that was I thought we would maybe sell 20 menus of Thanksgiving. We ended up doing 200.
No way.
Yeah, it was bonkers.
Was it mostly, do Americans say bonkers?
I do, because it was.
Was it mostly Americans that were buying Thanksgiving?
Oh, it was probably 99% Americans. But then there was a lot of other people in the area that lived around here that saw we were offering it.
This is an American, we haven't talked about where we're sitting. So we're within... Not a stone's throw from the Eiffel Tower, really, is it? But it's
probably an 8-minute walk to the
8-minute walk to the base of the tower. Over my left shoulder is the École Militaire.
Yeah. We're about 30 seconds outside of the metro of École Militaire.
Right. Yep. And Rue Claire is right there on the other side.
Yep.
So and they call it the American. They call it Little America, I think.
Oh, really? I never heard that before.
Well, there's a street there where you got the American.
The American University, the American Library,
but also
the American Church.
Yep. And there's a little shop that sells American food.
Oh yeah, the Real McCoy.
Yeah, except they're French. They got I went in there, no connection to America.
Oh really?
Yeah. Well, that's what the girl there told me. She's like, the owners are French.
Oh, that's funny. I think the old owners maybe used to be American or something. They used to have a second place that was a bit bigger that they sold as now a hamburger restaurant.
So there's an American vibe. So maybe there's
definitely an
Americans
American
living
vibe
here as well.
Oh, there's definitely that. For Thanksgiving, we had a lot of Americans from all over Paris that had ordered, and then a lot of our kind of local clientele that come and eat at Zia often. I think we're looking for a way to support, and so they opted to purchase some menus as well, and even partake in the American Thanksgiving that we did, which was awesome.
Yeah.
So that had gotten some gears turning, and I said, well, why don't maybe we can try and offer some to-go food and see if I'll do a new menu every week, and we'll see if we can't drum up some business that way. I didn't get any government assistance with Milagro because a lot of that was based off of previous earnings, which we didn't have, so I was just looking for things to do.
I'd say it must have been the toughest time to open a restaurant in the history of France.
I know it definitely wasn't the easiest situation, but overall, I'm just been ecstatic with how things have been going. Yeah. For as difficult as it probably could have been, I don't know if it's just dumb luck or what, but it's definitely been a lot more smooth, and I'm not necessarily at the numbers that I had anticipated hitting when we, should we have opened, say, when we were supposed to in 2019. But considering that it's the month of August 2021 in the middle of a pandemic, I'm definitely not upset with how things are going, that's for sure. I mean, at a minimum, I've at least got the wherewithal to kind of pull through anything and wait out what I need to at this point. So.
It feels like it could have been worse too. Like, in fact,
definitely could have been worse.
Yeah, and when I was in here, it was heaving. It was great. It was. I mean, I don't know if it was heaving by your standards, but
I think that. I mean, it was amazing. We had your table and I think another group of 2 on the books. I think so. We had maybe 8 reservations for the evening, and it ended up being our best night. We had 33 covers for the night. That was the busiest we've been so far for a night service.
Let's talk about this place that we're sitting in right now, because the members of the Eiffel Tower, the Patreon supporters, have met you.
Yeah.
This is a weird backwards thing, because I think it's the first time. So I had you as for anyone who's not familiar with the Eiffel Tower, we don't do adverts, but we have Patreon membership, and for the Patreon memberships, I do walk shows sometimes, which is walking and talking. And after you and I met at Zia during that, it was May 2020, you took me around the 7th. Mm-hmm. You took everyone around the 7th for an hour. I started watching it, right? An hour and a half, we walked all around the Eiffel Tower, and we ended up in this area, and you took me in here.
Yeah.
And it was nothing like what it looks like today. It was cool to see it.
Yeah.
Everything was boarded up on the front. This, I'm looking at the gate here, which was green.
Yeah, it was green. Oh, they painted it afterwards. Yeah, it's hard to remember sometimes for me.
That's what I was thinking. I should send you the link so you can see it again. But this, I want to talk about the gate, because that's the one thing that you kept.
That and our ceiling here in the main dining room we kept.
What's the deal with that?
We really liked the texture.
Yeah.
I think it's a texture that's kind of like they maybe put some plaster onto like some type of mold and then just squish it onto the roof or something.
That makes sense. I'll take pictures of all this and put it on Instagram, I think.
But we love that, so we just repainted it, and then this kind of gate that leads to the downstairs restrooms and our preparation area, our storage area. Anyway, it's in terms of where we started and where we are now, it's definitely night and day. Yeah. It's nice to kind of finally be here. It was a trek to get here. There was a lot of frustrations, but at the same time, I think it's better to look at it as a great learning experience. Mm-hmm. I'm not necessarily certain that this will be my last restaurant project, and I think as I continue to kind of grow and learn, that other projects on the horizon or other opportunities might present themselves. Mm-hmm. So I think it was a great learning opportunity for what I won't do, in the future.
Sure.
But yeah, no, it's definitely it took much longer than anticipated to get all of the construction done, and those things were kind of out of my control. As much as I heaved and hollered to kind of get things moving along, there wasn't much I could do.
But if you were to get a new restaurant, would you want to have something that's a little further along the renovated track, kind of?
Not so much that. It would more like be contract stipulations that, if somebody were hired to say oversee the project, that they have certain responsibilities in terms of the timeline of completion. The architect that I had hired, although I think they did do a beautiful job in its decor, really dropped the ball in a lot of the oversight. I'd kind of made jokes about, for the same amount of money, you could go to architecture school, you could design a beautiful space like this, get a contractor to build it out for you, and still probably save some money and some time.
Oh my gosh.
But at the end of the day, there's not much I can change about the past. I really just want to focus on the future, and this is the thing that's kind of keeps me motivated, is how can I continue to grow and make coming to eat here one of the best experiences that you can have in Paris. I don't want a Michelin star or anything like that. It's not about the show. I just want people to have a great time coming in, feeling like they're, super welcome, have a great meal, have a fun time, a great experience. And I'm just super grateful as our staff. It's the same thing that I want for when people come to Zia.
That's what I was going to say, because I got the feeling with Zia, although I never lived in this area, I'm new to this area basically, but when I've been in there, there's a feeling that there's people want to be there.
I mean, I like to think that we try and provide like a, I don't want to call it a homey atmosphere, because clear that you're at a restaurant, and I don't want somebody to come in and necessarily get food that they can easily make at home.
Yeah.
So something to come in where things are a little bit more elaborate. But a large part, I think, of the success that I've had at either of the restaurants is in our ability to make the experience great for the customer. For any of the people that come and dine at the restaurants, it's that they sit down. What can we get for you? We do it with a smile on our face, and I'd like to say maybe it's a bit of an American style of service, but I do think it goes a long way.
Here's a question. I got an Instagram message from someone who ended up unfollowing me after this conversation. But she said the French waiters are terribly rude, they're the worst in the world. And I said, you be the judge, okay? I said, I disagree. I think there's a bit of a miscommunication often. I said it'd be crazy they're the rudest in the whole world as well. And I actually think they can be really good. What do you think? So,
that is interesting. I'd be curious to know where this person might be from. If they're from the States, there's a significant difference in the job in France than there is in the States. Not to say that people aren't professional or anything like that, but in France, we don't work for $2.13 an hour and survive off of tips.
Do you mean is that the minimum wage or something?
No.
What do you mean
basically in the States, a lot of places will pay, between $2.13 and $3 an hour.
$2.13.
It's mostly to cover the tax. Generally, you don't get an actual paycheck in the States. It's usually just something like, maybe $50, $100 or something like that.
Whoa.
In a lot of places, your salary is generally derived from tips that you get at the end of service every night, which is why Americans tend to tip anywhere from 15 to 20%.
Yeah.
So you have the servers in the States, their livelihood is based on that percentage. In France, it's not. So they have a salary here. I think a lot of times, when they have that salary or they have tenure, they've been there for a long time. Maybe there's some folks that get a little disenchanted if customers can be difficult, which oftentimes they might be. But I think part of it is also, when you have some of these, say, older servers who have been doing the job for a long time, it's almost like theater, but it's part of what goes into the work is to be brusque. They have a lot of tables they gotta wait on. It's not there to be like a welcoming, amicable, kind of thing. It's like, tell me what you want, I'll just go get it for you, and let's leave it at that. I don't need to be your friend, because they're not worried about the tips or anything like that. For the most part, some of that style is, I think, more and more going away as people realize that even if you're getting a salary, people still leave some tips or something. But I think that there's part of that where there's maybe some maybe they're a little bit disenchanted by the years of work as server, but some of the more classic places with black vests, bow ties, that kind of thing, a lot of those guys, it's it's very much like what we would call here in France, like a métier. It's more than just a career, it's kind of
what did you call it in French?
A métier.
Métier, okay. Yeah.
It's more than just your career. It's also your professionalism and everything that goes behind handling that stuff. So it's that. I think it's kind of their art form. So
let's. You have the ears of many Americans right now. If you were to give a tip to, all you Canadians and Australians and British, I know you're listening too, but Justin is half American here. If you were to give these guys a tip for dealing with a waiter on the Champs-Elysees, like a typical black vest.
If I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not eating on the Champs-Elysees.
Okay. Well, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Like
I know.
Like a tourist eats.
But I think just go for the fact that that there's more of a misunderstanding. For the most part, as you were kind of, to get back to the point where you said that they were very rude, and then you said that there was maybe a misunderstanding. I often find that actually most of the waiters, probably 90% of them, are actually super kind and are even trying to be like maybe a little sarcastic and like make a joke. And sometimes the sarcasm in France doesn't translate over into English, and so the customer might be like, oh my god, that guy's so rude. And I think that can happen to anybody, but a lot of times I think a lot of it is the sarcasm, and they're a little bit like, whoa, what's that?
It could be a big part of it, actually.
So I think that part of it is that, and it's just like a misunderstanding. I would say, I mean, going to a restaurant, especially like a brasserie or a bistro, is generally straightforward, pretty easy experience. You know, you're not going to get like the most amazing meal of your life for the most part. It's meant to go for a good meal that's quick, and you know, you get what you need. But also to understand that dining in France is more of an experience than just going somewhere to have a quick meal. You can go to a boulangerie and get a sandwich for that. If you're going to go sit down, it's like you're taking the time out of your day to enjoy, you know, a minute of breathing and stuff like that. If you got to be somewhere in 45 minutes, like maybe going out and sit down is not necessarily the best idea. So,
speaking of having to be somewhere, I know you've got to be somewhere soon, so I've got a few quick questions to wind up. But I want to add on that miscommunication part. I also think, because some waiters and waitresses maybe don't speak English as well as they think either. And you know, in French, it's perfectly normal to come up to someone and say, bonjour, dites-moi. Right? Or bonjour, je vous écoute. Which literally translates to, and I've heard this in English by a French waiter, tell me. Which seems quite rude in English, or I'm listening to you. If you got to someone and say, I'm listening to you, you're like, how dare you? You're meant to be listening to me. But in French, it's perfectly polite to say that.
I think that, and that's, I think, exactly where you're at, is misunderstanding. It might be just the way it comes across is, you know, it's a literal translation that doesn't necessarily convey the sentiment. It gets the point across, but necessarily it's, you know, like you said, people will be shocked, like, of course you're listening to me. What else would you be doing?
I want to end up on something that you talked about before, that I think a lot of people's foodies who are listening, their ears would have pricked up. You said you worked at Arpege 10 years ago.
So that's what brought me to France. Was I had a job lined up at Arpege 10 years ago.
People who don't know what Arpege is?
It's in the top 10 best restaurants in the world. Vegetable-focused eatery here, also in the 7th, across from the Musée Rodin, that is run by the chef Alain Passard.
Famous, iconic.
Very famous chef.
If he walked down the street, would you chat to him?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. He's just like maybe one of the nicest guys I've ever worked for.
Really?
Oh, he's an absolute angel, that guy.
Yeah.
He deserves all the accolades that he gets. One, he's very passionate about what he does.
Yeah.
Super knowledgeable.
I saw him on that show.
Really
what was that?
Chef's Table?
Yeah.
It's a great episode. And I mean, it's... I was very grateful for having gotten a chance to kind of work among the folks that were also at the restaurant at the same time as me, because a lot of the people that have trained there go on to do some pretty amazing things.
Right, like a class of 2010 kind of thing.
Exactly. So I mean, it's nice to see where people that I worked with 10 years ago have gone on in their lives and what they're doing, because many of them are doing some pretty amazing stuff.
Okay, so I've got a sort of deeper question about that.
Yeah.
But on a lighter note, in the video, I thought it was quite funny, the video we did a year and a half ago, you said that you were quite clueless 10 years ago.
Oh, yes, very much so.
Talk us through one of the mistakes that you made.
Well, I mean, so a lot of the times was like, you know, maybe not cleaning some pots and pans for the chef as well as I could have, or I think one instance that we talked about when we were walking around was when I was defeathering some pheasants and some ducks.
You said you'd never done it.
I had never done it before.
I want to hear it again. So they come in, they put a pheasant in front of you.
So they put a pheasant in front of me. One guy just showed me for like 5 seconds, like, here's what you do, and be careful about this part, which is the down.
The what? The down?
The down. So you have like a layer of feathers, and then under that is the down, which is like the really soft feathers. But pheasants in particular have this really thin skin, and it's pretty important that you don't rip it. So you got to like pull these feathers out, being relatively delicate, but at the same time you got to be really fast. So there's kind of a balance of like the delicate and the quickness that you got to work. And I mean, I just remember having feathers just all over me. Feathers were everywhere on the walls. It was like
I would die.
Super hot room.
That stress too, like knowing that the head chef wants something from you as well. Or?
You know, I think if anything, it was just more the stress of wanting to do a good job, and you know, wanting to kind of have a validation that you did a good job. So I think if anything, it was more like, oh my gosh, I hope I'm defeathering this pheasant correctly.
But is that place vegetarian, no?
No, I mean, he took red meat off of his menu in 2001
Yeah.
and has focused mostly on vegetables since then, but there's still poultry, some game.
I want to eat there, but I feel like it's very expensive.
It is very expensive. Go for lunch.
Yeah.
It's much less expensive. It's probably a third of the price.
Right.
You get pretty much almost the same meal, and it's an absolute wonderful experience.
Okay.
A 3 Michelin star restaurant is really the kind of thing that is like theater. If you go into it thinking that it's more than just the meal, I think you got your head on right, because it's not just about the food that's on the plate. It's like the presentation. Everything's on the silver platters. Everybody's kind of walking around in sync, and just it's a really beautiful experience and worth trying at least one time. Definitely go for lunch though; it's much cheaper than that.
Does the chef speak English?
No, I think maybe a little bit, you know. But
I'd love to talk to him.
I mean, he doesn't do. I think the whole Chef's Table episode was all in French.
Right.
And
Here's the last question that brings us into today.
Yes.
Ties everything together. How much did your time at the restaurant Arpege shape who you've become today and what you're doing?
oh my goodness, you know, in terms of shaping who I think it gave me a lot of opportunity to follow opportunities that presented themselves. So it gave me the chance to do that. A big part of why my wife and I stayed in France was during my time at Arpege. She had launched a photography business that started doing really well.
Shout out to Lindsay.
Yeah, shout out to Lindsay for sure. Pick Tours Paris. But she had done that, and we wanted to see how that business would continue to grow. And after working at Arpege, it was pretty easy to get a job at almost any restaurant. So we opted to stick around. 1 year became 2 years, 2 years into 3, and now it's been 10. And during that time, you know, various opportunities presented themselves, having had the chance to work with other people after having worked at Arpege. And so as my culinary training had kind of grown and my experiences had grown, I was more capable of kind of following those opportunities. And so, 5 years ago, we opened Zia, which was kind of my option to do a more kind of relaxed breakfast and lunch restaurant, where my wife, who was pregnant at the time, it allowed me to get home earlier and kind of be with them in the evenings before bedtime, which was nice. Now, I think for the dinner services at the new restaurant can go till pretty late, and then hanging out and just lounging and relaxing for a little bit. I get home after they sleep. But it's still, this is a much more kind of elaborate experience than Zia is. More on kind of the French product, the beautiful French produce, kind of more of a real straightforward lunch and what you would expect for a dinner restaurant, with a great wine list, with everything from, say normal to biodynamic to natural wines that come from, a lot of various places. So this is kind of my experience to kind of delve more into a lot of the way I was trained. And so if anything, it's had more of an influence on what I'm doing, say, over the last 2 months than what I did maybe over the last 5 years. I didn't do much brunch food at
and it's topped off with a lovely chef and owner.
Yeah.
And on that note, if people do come in here in the future after listening to this, should they say hello to you, Justin?
Absolutely, 100%. We have an open kitchen. I'm often in the dining room, and I love when people say hi. It's great to get to know folks from all over. It's definitely one of the reasons I do what I do.
There you go.
So do not hesitate to say hello.
There you go, guys. You have got your task. Say hello to Justin. Put it on your bucket list next time you're in Paris. But Justin, thank you so much for sharing your story and your time with us.
Thanks for coming by. I appreciate it.
So there you have it, Justin Kent. What a lovely guy. As I said, go and check out his restaurant, Milagro. Say hello from me. I'm not trying to get a commission or something here. I just want you to go and meet the guy. Lovely guy, great food, as I said. And, if you can't make it to the restaurant, go to Zia. A really nice place for a coffee or for food as well, if they're open by the time you're in Paris, guys. Now, I said I was going to explain a little bit more about that walk show that we did. I've rewatched it, and it's really fun. Through the 7th, during the middle of the sort of Paris confinement period, right when we were let out again, but it was really empty. It was really beautiful. And you can watch it if you're a member Or if you're quick, as I said, if you go to youtube.com/watch?v equals big V, big Q, big C, U, big P, big F, 3, F, big H, 0, you can watch it for free. I'm not even kidding. That's the link to the private YouTube video. You can't find it by searching. You can if you write down exactly what I said. And the reason I say that is because I want you to watch it. I want everyone to watch all the stuff that I do. At the moment, it's sitting there with 443 views. I'm interested if that will go up. If you did take the time to pause that and write it down, leave a comment on the YouTube video. And right when we finished that podcast episode, Justin said he wanted to do another walk show, and I said that was a great idea. So for Patreon members, current Patreon members, we're going to do a walk along Rue Claire in the morning in a couple of days. I think it'll be Wednesday. It might not be Wednesday. It'll be confirmed on Patreon. We're going to walk down Rue Claire looking at all the food, and we're going to end up in his restaurant again so you can see the difference from May last year. And I think you guys will really enjoy that, be able to talk to a talented chef in Paris and ask questions, as we always do on the walk shows. So more information on that, but it will be in the morning because I know that you guys in Australia are very locked down, and I want you to be able to watch one live. Replay for everyone else afterwards. I'm going to end this one with an email. This one comes from Louise Jenkins in Australia, incidentally. She writes, "Hi Oliver. In fact, I did the South African accent at the beginning. I am Australian. Maybe I'll give this a shot. G'day Oliver. I've meant to write for ages to let you know how much I enjoy your podcast and post on social media. You know, in Australia, a funny thing is, if you ever want to imitate an Australian accent, they often go up at the end of the sentences, like they have an inflection as if they're asking a question. And if you ever want to do it, people with a very strong Australian accent tend to do it. I don't know much about Louise Jenkins, but let's say she did it. She'd sound like this. It's all helped me to keep that flame burning for Paris during the pandemic and various lockdowns we've had in Melbourne. For someone who's visited the country many times over the past 20 years and now not able to, your stories, pictures, videos, podcasts are such wonderful recollections for me and provide hope that I will return sometime. Oliver, I'll stop. Oliver, I've made a comment on last Monday's podcast. I really enjoyed the one about writing a review, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm sorry to hear about the silly negative comments that some people make, but hopefully you won't let them get you down too much, as there are 1,000 more positive vibes always being sent your way. That's true, Louise. I am spoiled by all the positive vibes. A note on that, and I never want this podcast to get into any kind of like depressed complaining about negative reviews and stuff, but I likened it to someone else like this. Imagine if you're walking down the street and 100 people are in a big line to talk to you. Just you, anyone, normal listener out there, someone in Ireland maybe today, and there are 100 people lined up and all of them say something to you. They're strangers, who cares? They all say something, and 99 of them are exceptionally positive. They say really lovely things. Let's say about your appearance, how you dress, your face, just, your smell. They say really lovely things. And one of those people, one of those 100, says to you something exceptionally negative, like really, really negative. I feel, and I think I can say confidently for anybody, that at the end of that day, you'll find yourself focusing on that negative one. Even though there's 99 other people said such lovely things to you, you'll get home and you'll be like, gosh, someone said to me today that my whatever. And it will stick with you. And I think that's what happens online when people leave comments. You can get 1,000 lovely comments, and then when someone says something super negative, it's hard to ignore it. And I really think the only way to really get around it is to not read the comments and the emails. But at this point, I want to keep reading because I think it's really nice to be able to interact with all you guys and respond to you. So, like I said, I don't want to go on about it, but I think the best way around negative comments and stuff on the internet is just to keep the positivity going. And if that means leaving other comments for other people or me doing it as well, just spread positivity. It's very important. And I hope, for your sake, everybody, that you never have to have 99 compliments and one horrible person, because it would probably be rather horrible. But if it ever happens, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. I'm going to continue with Louise's email because there's a point in it that I want to address. She says, I also feel a bit guilty whenever you start talking about being a Patreon member and supporting you. I'm unable to do it as I haven't been working since the start of the year and I barely have 2 brass razzoos to rub together. Is that an Australian idiom? She writes. I barely have 2 brass razzoos to rub together. It may well be. But that isn't a currency in Australia, if you're wondering. Anyway, I always try and support you in other ways if I can. I noticed that an Australian, I'm not going to name this person, but I noticed an Australian news breakfast presenter follows you on Twitter. Why don't you get in touch? Maybe you can be on TV. Take care. Keep up the wonderfully uplifting podcast and accounts of Parisian life for us. Thank you from Louise Jenkins. That was really kind of you, Louise. And I found that breakfast presenter follows me, and I messaged her. So thanks very much for that tip. But I want to just comment on that thing about feeling guilty. I hate the idea that anyone would ever feel guilty listening to this podcast. And I understand that membership might not be a possibility for many of you, and that's fine. I want you to enjoy it. You can ignore when I talk about Patreon. If you have got disposable income to be a member of a podcast, I encourage you to do it. There's lots of benefits, and you help me make it better, as I hope I've proven over the years. But if you don't feel bad, don't feel guilty. Doing things like leaving positive comments or telling your friends or tipping me off that someone follows me on Twitter, that kind of stuff is invaluable to me. And I'm very happy to share Patreon content with people every now and again anyway. Like I said, youtube.com/watch?V equals big V, B, Q, big C, U, big P, big F, 3, F, big H, 0. Why don't you go and watch 90 minutes of me walking through the 7th with Justin from May 2020? But don't listen feeling guilty. Life's too short. Enjoy the podcast. If you do want to be a member, patreon.com/The Earful Tower. If you really want to watch the walk show I'm going to do with Justin this week, and you can't afford to be a member, maybe help me out somehow and I'll send you the link as well. Let's all have fun. Let's enjoy Paris, and let's hope you can make it into Milagro or Zia at some point in the near future. Justin, thank you for being on the show. Everybody, thank you for listening. I'll be back with another new episode next week as always. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.
I don't really know where we are. I just wanna look at the stars and go for a ride. Let's go for a ride. Taking our time.